12 Years a Slave is an award-winning film directed by Steve McQueen. It is a true story based on the life of Solomon Northup, a free man who was deceived, kidnapped, and sold into slavery in Louisiana. For 12 years, he endured torture, degrading inhumanity that was Southern slavery on the Bayou unit until his rescue in 1853. Solomon is the narrator telling the story from his own point of view and perspective. He is also the protagonist, as the entire story is based upon his years in slavery. Solomon, a 21 years old African American free man, plays violin. One day, two men, Hamilton and Brown, ask him to join and play a few gigs. Instead, they drug him and sell him to Birch, a slave keeper in Washington. From Washington, Solomon, taking on a new name, Platt, is sold to William Ford in Bayou Wolf in Louisiana. The setting is 1841 in Saratoga Springs, New York, 1841 to 1853 in Bayou Wolf, Louisiana. The time period was 10 to 20 years before the Civil War. New York is in the north, where Solomon was born as a free man. When he is captured in 1841, he is sent to the south, where slavery is encouraged. He spends 12 years there as a slave. During the 1800s, wealth was closely affiliated with power. Those who had money automatically had more power over those who didn't. In the slavery time period, the masters were Caucasian and held power over the slaves. There were rarely any Caucasian slaves and rarely any colored-skinned masters. 12 Years a Slave grappled with the racism that fueled slavery and Solomon's suffering. The narrative illustrates how racism is an instrument for human wickedness. A justification for a slave clearly points out that racism is a learned behavior, not an inherent understanding that people are born with. The overarching purpose of 12 Years a Slave is to reveal heartbreaking realities of slavery for the sake of strengthening anti-slavery attitudes and furthering the abolitionist movement.
Any more, I'll earn you 100 lashes.
I know what it's like to be the object of master's lash. In his own time, good Lord will manage them all.
I will survive. I will not fall into despair. I will keep myself hardy till freedom is opportune.
The story is a truly portrait of the transition of identity from a free man to a slave who doesn't want to live in this imprisonment. In the story, when Northup says that days ago I was with my family in my home, now you tell me all is lost. Tell no one who I am if I want to survive. I don't want to survive, actually. I want to live. Northup says this to his other friends while on board the ship to the slave market. This quote encapsulates the theme of identity that remains prevalent throughout the narrative. What will become of me? This quote is uttered by Patsy, another dynamic character of the story. In her desperation as Northup is freed from Mab's plantation, she desperately clings to him, terrified for her life and what it will become once he has left. Northup removes her from his body and turns to leave. As he walks away, Patsy asks this question. Her experience of physical and sexual violence make life a helpless and painful one. And this line demonstrates how she fears that losing Northup's company and protection may mean the end for her too. There are also deep effects of usage of racism in speech acts towards the African American people throughout the story. For example, on one occasion, Patsy requests Solomon and says that I have a request, an act of kindness. All I ask end my life. Take my body to the margin, to the swamp. On another point, there is a obvious threatening elements when Epps is sure that Solomon was whispering something to Patsy, but Solomon insists that he was not. Epps says that I'll cut your black throat. Moreover, the story was full of symbolism. The commonly used symbols for violence were whip and chain. Every slave owner used whip and chain to assert their power over the slaves and to make sure that they don't rebel against their masters. Eventually, he then returns to his family after 12 years of imprisonment as a free man. McQueen's 12 Years a Slave is a stunning contribution to slave filmography because it probably is the first to incorporate all these truths of New World slavery in one beautifully written, filmed, and acted masterwork. Black history, after all, contextualizes the current political and economic marginalization of an African-descended diaspora that has fueled frightening episodes of unrest in much of the Western world. This history also is fundamental to indigenous cultural productions of music, dance, clothing, linguistic expression, etc. Thank you.